Hello, everyone. This is Marianne Francis, LMFT from Transforming Hearts PLLC. And today is part 2 of identifying laziness. And last week, I had talked about some things, even for myself, to be able to say, I'm feeling lazy, I'm feeling different things, and I want to be able to change that aspect. Now that I'm aware of certain times where I just become a little bit lazy, right? And so I asked you all to see if you wanted to join me on this kind of journey to see, even for yourself, if there are parts of you that can identify some laziness that you might have in yourself, wanting to change certain habits that you might have, and trying to intentionally do something better for you. And if you did join along, if you did try, always comment below or in the chat afterwards if you hit the replay, and let us know how you did on this week-long journey, right? And it almost seems like a week is not long enough, but you always want to, in a sense, track your progress because and reflect on it, because you want to be able to see, well, what did I do well in, what I didn't do well in, and how can I improve, right? So today, I'm just going to spend this brief time on live to have that discussion, right? And I'm going to base it upon myself and some of the things that I had learned, what might have thrown me off, and what kept me on track. So I'll start from like day 1 to 3. So day 1 to 3, I felt like I did really well. My motivation was there. And last week I had talked about I wanted to include a little bit more stretching. And with that, I also included some positive affirmations. So I would put on a YouTube reel or anything like that, and I just clicked on positive affirmations, or sometimes I even did motivational speakers. So I just can sit back and listen. And for the first few days, the first 3 days, I felt like I did well. And after that, it was like during those days, I felt motivated, inspired after I had listened to some of those positive affirmations, as well as or motivational speakers, to the point where I was kind of sending it to my kid, like, here you go, here you go. And she'd come down the steps and she was listening it to herself. So I'm like, okay, so this is something that I can also kind of rope in my kid in doing, to a certain extent, because whether she has to replay the play or not, right? And then I had to think about, I actually just thought about like 2 days ago, like, wait, where am I in this, right? So what changed for me was the fact that I added something else. So I began last week, I re-signed back up with Lindsay at Freedom by Fitness, that does virtual exercises that every other month I'm signing up to do something. So I kind of skip a month, but I added that back into my routine in the morning. So instead of getting up and stretching and listen to the motivation, instead what I was doing was getting up and working out. So that was a good thing for me. And I also noticed that did change the routine I was starting to build for myself. So I think that's something to be mindful of, and something to look out for, is saying, okay, if you add something in that still can be really good for you, does it throw off the routine that you're beginning to build? So my stretching and the positive affirmation motivational speaking. So as soon as I would get up, I tried not to, even if I went on my phone for a second, because I wanted to try to break the habit of getting on the phone and just scrolling. So even if I got on my phone for a moment to kind of check emails, see if anybody got in contact with me during the night, I immediately went to YouTube, put on the positive affirmations. I started my stretches, and I will continue listening to the positive affirmations throughout the breakfast time. So that way it was always on go. And again, your attention to these things just might be more subconscious. So even though I may not be completely in tune to the positive affirmations, there is somebody speaking and it is still coming in a certain way, right? And once I would grab my breakfast, because last week was nice, I would sit outside and listen to. Now I'm a little bit more in tune because I'm just eating, and that becomes something that becomes subconscious because I'm just eating, and then I'm listening more intently to what the motivational speak or the positive affirmations, um, what they had to say, right? And so I was taking that in. So that created a great routine for me for the 3 days. When I added in the morning workouts, that's when it started throwing that routine that I had built off a little bit. And that's one of the things that I noticed. Again, I still added something that was good for me, but it didn't create that consistency that I was already starting to build. And if there's anything that you guys have noticed, even for yourself, if there was something that threw it off, put it in the comments. Let's share this, let's connect. So that is definitely one thing that I've realized. And so when I didn't have those workouts, my attempt on the following day was to go back into the stretching and the positive affirmations, the motivation. So that was something I was able to keep up until the weekend hit. And I don't know if this is where most people tend to fall off on things or not, right? So the weekend hit, and there's part of me that wants to maybe that I have a little bit more time to sleep in or just relax, and that might be something I do. But then in my head, I'm like, okay, I got to go. And to be honest, I completely forgot about the stretching and the affirmations. Completely forgot about it. So it wasn't until Monday that I was like, definitely didn't add that in at all. So Monday, it took me a little bit of time, and I added the affirmations later on in the day. It wasn't in the morning, but it was later on in the day. I did not do the stretching. So it's interesting how when you kind of fall back into a different routine, and we're creatures of habit. So we sometimes fall backwards into what is more familiar or comfortable for us, and what we haven't yet structured in our day-to-day routine in some manner, right? So it's something to be mindful of. It's not a bad thing. It's just saying, this is some things that I'm learning about myself. And that's part of this journey. That's part of this process, is kind of learning where you are, what sets you back, what keeps you motivated. Do you have to switch the routine up a little bit? And what I did also notice that was different even on the Monday than it was last week was that my husband was home in the morning, and usually, sometimes he's not. So when he was home in the morning, I was more lazy. I was more relaxed. And so therefore, stretching didn't come into play. The positive affirmations didn't come into play in the morning. So I want to bring up an example of what you can do in this process, right? Especially if you have one, it's easy. It may be easier for you to stay focused when you're doing it by yourself, or maybe not. Some people it's not. But what you can also do is have like accountability partner. And I know that's helpful for me, especially during times where I may want to be a little bit more relaxed and lazy. So a couple weeks ago, some of you know that I was away in North Carolina. And during that time, I was trying to change up kind of my morning breakfast routine, right? And my sister's like, no, do this, do this. So even though I was resistant to it, I started changing some of my morning breakfast routine and the things that I was eating in the morning time. And every morning she's just like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you eating?" Because I know myself, I overeat. I do overeat. I don't eat when I'm hungry. I eat just even sometimes when I'm bored. And I'm not sure who else that's an issue with, but I do. I eat when I'm bored, not necessarily because I'm hungry. So it's about training and, again, changing that part of the mindset. So for 2 weeks, I was out there. So for 2 weeks, she was almost able to hold me accountable, which coming now for the past 2 weeks since I've been home, I've been able to keep myself accountable for it. So maybe for myself, I know that it takes 2 weeks of building that habit to continue the habit, right? So what would be helpful is maybe bringing in my husband and saying, you know what, this is what I've been building into my morning routine, especially on the days that he's there. And he'll be all for it if that doesn't bother him, right? Put on a little bit of positive affirmation, stretch, and that's something that we could possibly do together just as well. So that brings in the other person, and it's holding me accountable, because if it takes me 2 weeks to build that habit much better, then for me that can be a positive thing, right? So if you have a accountability partner or someone to join you with it, then that might be helpful for you. And again, for some people, um, they're able to do these things on their own. So connect with someone. If you don't have someone that you feel like can hold you kind of responsible at times and kind of send a gentle reminder, right? Because that might be helpful for you. Being intentional. Being intentional is also something that you want to make sure that you do, right? If you're not understanding the reason why you're trying to change your habit and the outcome of what you'd like to see happen, then it might not be inspiring enough for you. You might not be motivated to do that and continue on with that process because there's no intention or purpose behind it. So really understand your intention and your purpose behind you trying to create a new habit and the outcome that you'd like to see. We talked about the routine of it, and granted, how did I feel? How did I feel during those times that I did do the stretching, that I did listen to the motivational speaking or the positive affirmations? For me, it made me feel more active. It wasn't like, oh yes, I'm ready to go. It was a subconscious thing for me, and I was just getting stuff done. It wasn't, again, this energy boost. It was just going to get stuff done because, again, subconsciously, all these positive messages are working through me in the morning time. And in the morning time, I know I can be a little bit more relaxed. And so for me, I might know that maybe I need those positive affirmations or that inspiration in the morning to get me kind of activated for the rest of the day. So I'm curious to know, for you all, if you did come along this journey, or if you're reflecting on previous times where you wanted to build a new habit and routine, what worked for you, what didn't work for you. Again, my lessons were being intentional, having an accountability partner, and building it into my routine. Those are the things that were effective for me in creating a new habit. And for myself, I know it takes me about 2 weeks of consistency to make that happen. Track that, see where that goes for you, and tweak things as it comes along, because it's about learning yourself. It's about knowing your journey, who you are, what works for you, and what doesn't work for you, because what may work for me may not work for you. So definitely comment on it, because you never know who else might be there and might resonate with something that you said. Okay, so thank you for tuning in for part 2 of Identifying Your Laziness. This is Marianne Francis from Transforming Hearts.